Should be a little bit higher. I just feel like you can't see my head, which is weird. Hello, so I started my YouTube in February of this year, which obviously was very recently, but it was still after the beginning of the new year. So in the new year, some of my favorite videos to watch are like the best of the last year videos. So like people talk about all of the books that they loved, all of their favorite top 10s, blah, blah, blah. I love watching videos where people are talking about like their favorite books of the last year out of everything they've read. And I've always wanted to do one of those. And it kind of bums me out that I started my channel after the beginning of the year. But then I realized February is still technically the beginning of the year. And so I'm gonna still do it. Even if we were in the summer, I'm pretty sure I would just still do it because I want to do it and it seems fun. So today we're going to be talking about my best books of 2022. And by best books of 2022, I don't mean that they were published necessarily in 2022, but they were the best books that I read in 2022. Also, we're having a cozy moment because a couple of the things came finally from my last collection drop in my shop. I'm actually gonna show you. So my last collection was called the Spooky Valentine's Collection, and I had a bunch of designs. I'm moving soon, so I only got a couple of things for myself, but I got things that I would be able to use in my move, which will be very helpful and also very cute. So I have this tote bag, which is so big that it's hard to fit into the frame. And this is the same kind of tote bag from the same distributor I've been using for the last few years. And I love them. They're so thick and like sturdy. And the inside, which is like one of my favorite things, is black, which is so cute. And the little design that I have on these are like little conversation hearts and ghosts. And they say things like, watching you and bite me and you are creepy, which I just love it. I really like that print. It was like one of my favorites from that collection. So I also have a pillow, which is why this video is especially cozy because the whole time I'm hugging my pillow. I love it. It's so soft and squishy and like sturdy. Soft and sturdy. Yeah, it's a selling point. Soft and sturdy. What an adorable little moment, like sleeping on a pillow. Like, can you picture this? Just, I don't make that face when I sleep, probably. It's more like, my boyfriend can probably tell you, don't. If you're watching this right now, do not tell them. Also, this is super cute. I'm probably gonna put a little clip in here. The other day, I was making dinner for us in the kitchen, which, wait, where am I? The kitchen's over there, just in case you wanted to know. Anyway. I was making dinner for us and I heard my boyfriend giggling, and so I turned around to see what he was doing, and he was watching one of my videos, and he's just like at his computer painting his little guys, like watching the video, and I was like, how cute. And so I like stealthy took footage of it because I'm a creep. And
enhance.
yeah, it's cute. Anyway, so, oh, right. So obviously there's this little pencil bag too, which, oh, look at the skill. I did that like barely, you know, whoop, I dropped it. So much for skill. Okay. So this is another little, why is it so bright? Okay. Thank you. This is another little design, and all of the designs are actually available for all of the products when I do a collection drop usually. Again, this is the one for February. There's a different one up now, which is called the Dark College. There's a different one up now, which is called the Dark Cottage collection, and that one has like a bunch of like witchy, spooky, I don't know, little things that I thought were cool. Mushrooms, if you like mushrooms, go check it out. I'll put a link in the bottom. I'm not trying to be obnoxious. I'm just excited for these things and wanted to share them. And then I also have from the last collection this, which is inspired by like the Jennifer's Body sweater that Jennifer wears on her body, in Jennifer's Body. Anyway, I'm obsessed with her sweater. I'm obsessed with her. I'm obsessed with that movie. And so I knew that one of the designs in this collection had to be inspired by her. So I literally named the design Inspired by Jennifer's Body. I am so original. It's ridiculous. Yeah, so this is the other tote. And then this is the bag. I'm probably gonna try to, in the future, share updates like as I'm working on the collections in some of my vlogs, especially the monthly ones, because it would be cool to show you the process of things as I'm doing them, but right now I'm only able to show you stuff after they've already released and left my shop, so sorry about that. Again, these aren't available anymore, but if you want to check out the Dark Cottage collection, the link is below, and I'm planning on releasing a new collection every month or every 2 months. And then they're limited edition, so they're only going to be available for a little bit. And yeah, I'm gonna go to the books now, but I am gonna keep holding my pillow because it's cute and I love it. Okay, so for this video, I put together a list of 10 books that I read last year that I really loved. And last year I read over 150 books, so narrowing this down to 10 was not an easy task. Honestly, it was pretty difficult, but I did my best. So also, before I get started, just to mention, again, I know I've mentioned this multiple times, but I am moving very soon, so all the books that I'm about to talk about have been packed away. Sorry, I don't have them to show, but I will pop them up right here and they'll kind of just block this little area. High five, books. Yeah. This is your reminder to drink water if you have it, or to pause my face and go get some water if you do not have it, because it's good for you and it's good for your body and good for your skin, and I personally need this reminder. So when I'm editing this video later, I'm gonna know, hey, bitch, go drink some fucking water, and I'm gonna do it. Fingers crossed. Okay, so getting started, my first book is The Book of the Most Precious Substance, and this is by Sarah Gran. This is one of the first books that I actually read last year, and I had an arc of it, so I read it digitally. I actually don't own this one physically yet, which is just because I'm a broke bitch and I couldn't afford to buy it. But I'm going to, because I obviously really loved it. First book on the list. When I try to pitch this book to people, I ask them if they like the Da Vinci Code, and then I say, would you like the Da Vinci Code if it had a lot more sex? And depending on their answer, I will recommend this book. And I know that sounds a little weird, but it feels really fitting. Like, okay, so this is a story about a woman who is like a rare book dealer. And so she always goes to like these little markets and like talks to other people who also sell really rare books. And there's like a love interest, another man who sells weird books. Suddenly, one of these market people is like murdered. And there's also this like talk of like the secret book that'll grant you eternal life or secret powers or just something. So you're following these two main characters and you get involved in some weird shit. Like, when I tell you that it's like the Da Vinci Code with more sex, I'm not joking. There is like a whole sex cult. There's like a whole part of the book where it's very graphic. But it's also fun because it's like a mystery that you have to figure out, and I just really like puzzles and mysteries and things. It was just really fun for me. I think this was originally pitched as like very straight horror, and that is not the way to go into this. Go into this expecting sexy Da Vinci Code. I'm telling you, do not go into this expecting horror, because I don't think you're gonna get that from it. That's not what I got from it. I got a lot of adventure, a lot of intrigue, a lot of spice, but I did not really get horror from it. And that's not a bad thing. I really liked it, but I think it was maybe mismarketed, and I think that's why the ratings for this one are what they are, because people went into it expecting something that it wasn't ready to deliver. It delivered something else. Yeah. The next one on this list is Follow Me to Ground by Sue Ransford, and I listened to this one as an audiobook, and I would really recommend that because the voice of the narrator was so good for this kind of story. It felt so like Southern Gothic, like creepy, sweaty, like magical though. I don't know how to describe it. It's so good. This is about a girl who lives with her father, and they are kind of like the healers of the town, but there's a little bit of a stigma attached, and it's kind of like a coming of age story, honestly, but very weird. If you like weird stuff, I think you will enjoy this one, but if weirder things are not for you, which a lot of the time they're not for me, so I was honestly surprised by how much I liked this one. But again, if you like weird stuff, I think you'll like it. Especially if you like weird, like magical, witchy sort of things, because it definitely has that vibe. Sort of like a nature witch type thing, where you literally bury people and things in the ground to heal them or bring them back to life. Like, just wild stuff. It's so good. It was so good. It's very short, but it's very good. And then I have Station 11, which this is actually a reread, so I wasn't sure if I should include this, but I really love it, so it's gonna stay in my top 10. There was a recent TV series adaptation of this, and that's the reason that I reread it, because one of my friends recommended the show, and they told me not to reread the book going into it. Like, I don't know if they had like watched something or heard on the podcast, because I don't think they had read the book, but they were like, probably don't reread it and compare it, like it's its own thing. And me, being me, decided to do that anyway. And so I reread the whole book and then I binge watched the show. And of course, my brain, being what it is, could only spot the inaccuracies and the things that were different. Which, fair, because there were a lot of differences. And some of the things that I really loved about the book were not in the show. But they also, the show had like some different stuff, or maybe not necessarily different, but it was just shown in a different way than I think the book seemed to show it or intended, or I don't know how to explain it. But I did like the show, especially because I have watched it again since, and especially not right after coming off of reading the book. It's a lot better than I liked it initially. But yeah, like this was one of my favorite books the year that I originally read it, and it's again one of my favorite books of last year when I reread it. This one has like a split sort of timeline, which I always really like that in books. There's like a lot going on, and it doesn't really fully tell you how things are connected until toward the end, but when it does, it's like this really big reveal, and it's so wild. And you're like, oh, like now I understand how all these different characters like relate to each other and how they know each other. And there's kind of like one central character who isn't even the main character really, but one central character who connects all these different people through all of the time, like through the different timelines, which is also really interesting because that character dies at the beginning of the book, and like that's kind of part of the thing that starts off the story, as well as a pandemic. So there's also a pandemic that goes through, and if that's not your vibe right now, considering the last couple of years, totally understandable, but I do want to mention it just because it's a pretty big thing. It basically wipes out most of the world. I own another book by the author as well, but I haven't read it yet, and I think I might have packed it already, so I don't know when I'm gonna get to that. But there are also a bunch of different like side characters. So like there's like the main character that you're with, this girl, but over time you get to meet other people that she meets, and then you meet people that she doesn't even meet until later, or people that she only knows through other people in passing. There's a lot of stuff about this book that I really love too, like things that I think are specific to things I love, which is weird. Like obviously no book is like written for like me or anything, but it feels like it was like, and I know that that sounds egotistical and I don't mean it in a weird way, but okay, there's like a reference to one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek Voyager. Like first of all, to have a Star Trek reference isn't that wild or mind-blowing, but to have a Voyager reference, like I feel like if you're referencing like Voyager or Deep Space Nine, you really love Star Trek, because those aren't the ones that are normally referenced, you know? And I don't know, those are just not the ones that I normally see referenced in things. And the fact that this one has like a specific quote from Seven of Nine, who is my favorite character in all of Star Trek other than Data, which I will say again, Data, Seven of Nine. And if you know them and you know me, you'll probably know why I relate to them, but... And then there's also like a lot of little like Shakespeare things, because part of the timelines, the characters are like a traveling troupe of Shakespeare performers, which in like post-apocalyptic America, traveling troupe of Shakespeare performers, how those things together, those things seem like they should not go together, but they do. And for me, it's so good. I just love it. I just love the book. I love the show too now. I would recommend the book and the show highly. I've rambled about this longer than anything else so far, so. Okay, so next on the list we have Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour, and this was the first book that I read by the author, but since I've read this one, I've gone back and read a bunch of other ones because I loved this book so much. Like, this is probably in my top 3 books of the year, maybe. Like, it's so good. It's so good. And what's really interesting is I keep thinking I'm out of my YA time, you know, like I'm not into YA anymore as much. And then there are a couple of books here and there that really, really stun me, like wow me. This is definitely one of them. This is up there with like my top ever favorite books. And I don't even really know how to pitch this because I think it's got some horror elements, like it has ghosts and stuff, but it's not exactly horror. It's not, there are a lot of dark themes, but it's mostly about like healing and trauma and grief and found families, and just honestly, if I could just repeat healing again, because it really has a lot to do with healing the stuff that's happened to you, especially when you're really young, and how not healing that and not dealing with that can start to impact you later on in your life. And those things aren't topics that you often see covered in young adult fiction, and I think it was really cool to have that there. Not only that, but like the book itself is pretty inclusive as well. Like the relationships in it, it doesn't really have, it kind of has a romance element. Like, I don't know how to explain. It's kind of like a there's kind of like this romance element between the main character and two of the other characters, and I don't know, it's really difficult to describe. So the main character goes to this farm where they're taking a job and they're going to be helping to look after these kids, and when they're there they start finding that they're like ghosts in the woods and they could see them at night and stuff, and they're like, what's going on? While this is happening, they're also dealing with some trauma from their history and some stuff that happened to her while she was younger. And you don't fully know what that stuff is until later. And then along the way, you get to know the other people on the farm, the other characters, what the ghosts are and what they're there doing. It's just a lot, and it's a really beautiful story, honestly, and I'm pretty sure, and it made me cry, and I like things that make me cry, so yeah. All right, next we have Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, and this is my second or third book by the author, and this is really fun. I just really love thrillers or horror books that are set in the summer. Having a really bright setting like tropicals and on boats and with water and fun in the sun with creepy dark themes is always my favorite thing. I don't know why, I just love it. I also love like toxic BFFs and like girl relationships, and it was just fun. It was a lot of fun. I'm not gonna sit here and say that this is like the best book ever written or anything like that, but it was in my top 10 because of how much fun it was and how much fun I had reading it. And then we have Below by Laurel Hightower, and this was, again, just really fun. I don't know, I love Mothman stories so much. Like when I was a kid, my dad rented the Mothman Prophecies and I watched that for the first time, and I didn't know Mothman was a thing before that, and I was just like, oh, that's so creepy, like this is so weird. And since then, every time there's like a little documentary on TV, like, you know, the funny ones, or like the ones about like, does Bigfoot really exist? I always watch the Mothman ones. I don't know why. So when I saw the cover of this, I was like, that's Mothman. Like, I know Mothman and that is Mothman. I'm here for it. And this one's pretty short. I flew through it in like a single sitting. It's about a woman who's traveling, and I think she stops at like a truck stop, and there's a guy, and she kind of like meets him, and she's not sure if she can really trust him because obviously it's a guy at a truck stop and she's a woman traveling alone. So she leaves and she's like driving on her way, and I think there's like maybe a snowstorm or there's a storm of some sort. She ends up getting into some shenanigans on like a mountain, and this was so weird and so unsettling, but also really fun. Like I was turning the pages like, what is going to happen to this girl? Like she was like climbing, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but like there was a part where she was like climbing down some rocks, and I was just like, girl no, go back up. Like I was literally just like on the edge of my seat, like yelling almost, not out loud, but like in my head, like, no, don't do this, this is dangerous. Laurel is actually one of my auto-buy authors. Like I've read every book she has out right now, I believe. I'm pretty sure I have every book out by her right now, and several collections with short stories that she's written, and I just love everything she does. Actually, the day that I'm recording this, she has a short story collection releasing that I think released today, and she's just such a good writer. She writes really dark, like emotional horror, and it's always very, very heavy hitting. It usually has to do with like parenthood or like a mother's love for her child, but not always, but often. And she's also just like as a person so sweet. Like her son Tiny is actually a really big fan of my children's book, Rosie Paints with Ghosts. It's so cute, and I love him and I love her, and her books, like I've been reading her books since before, you know, I knew her. My opinion of her writing is totally unbiased, even though I love her as a person. I do just want to make that clear. I really love her writing and I really love her books, but also she's just a phenomenal human being, so yeah. And then I have Dead Silence, which this is like sci-fi horror, but there is a pretty I think my neighbor's hammering something. So this is like solidly sci-fi horror, but there's a little bit of a romance subplot to this, and honestly it's not a little bit, it's like a pretty big chunk of a romance subplot, and that did not bother me. I was fine with it, but when I went to look at the reviews after I read this book, a lot of people did not like it. They were not a fan of the romance, which is totally fair. So I do want to mention that, because if romance as a subplot is not your jam, you might not like this. Yeah. This is about a woman who is going to investigate a big ship. It's basically like if the Titanic, as like a big cruise ship, were in space. It's like a big luxury cruise spaceship. And it's where like very famous people and influencers and rich people and stuff were traveling and having like the first trip on this type of craft. And something happened along the way, and people lost complete communications with the craft, and all of these people disappeared. Like, they did not hear from them again. And suddenly it's resurfaced, and it's just like floating in space now. And so the woman, the main character, is sent out with a team to go investigate and see what happened. And oh my gosh, it is horrifying. Like, there's stuff described in this that I was so creeped out by. And again, this is another book on the list that I will say feels like it was like written for me. Like, I love cruise ship stories, especially if they're creepy. Like, Ghost Ship, hello? First of all, Ghost Ship has the best opening of a movie maybe ever. Like, and I'm just gonna say that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know how to put clips in of things. I'm just gonna maybe put a link down below to the opening, but I don't want to spoil it. So if you haven't seen that, you should go see that movie. It's like not even super recent or anything, but it's so good. That opening is so good. There's like wire, and anyway, that has nothing to do with this book. The book is set in space, obviously. And yeah, so I'm not going to tell you what happens on the ship and like what caused it to disappear in the first place or any of that, but I will say again that if romance as a subplot is not your thing, you will not like this. But if you don't care either way, or if you're fine with it, I think you might like this if you like space horror, because it's very creepy, and I don't know why more people didn't like it. It's one of my favorites. And since I'm talking about sci-fi space horror, I'm also going to lead into the next book on the list, which is Your Mind is a Terrible Thing by Haley Piper. This is another novella, so I just like went really hard into novellas last year, I guess, and the few years preceding that, I just really like horror novellas. I don't know. It is who I am. They're so short, and so much can be packed into such a small amount of space so well if the author does it well, which Haley did here. Haley is another one of my auto-buy authors, and I have read almost everything she's got out, if not everything. And she's got like a couple of other novellas, a short story collection, like other books. Like, there are bigger books too being published even like more recently, and then sequels to some of the older ones. And it's just, she's writing a lot. She's doing a lot. She's getting a lot of work done, and I'm grateful because I love to read it. I'm gonna sit here and keep reading it as long as I can. So this one is really cool because this felt like a really weird, dreamy episode of Star Trek. And if I have not established it already, I love Star Trek, so this is great for me. I will add the same note that I added for the last book, in that if you do not like romantic sort of subplots or things in your books, you might not like this, because there is like a bit of that and talk about that. But if it doesn't bother you, or if you're okay with that, you'll be fine. And I would also honestly recommend for both this one and the last one, even if you think you don't like romance subplots, maybe try it, because I liked them, and I wouldn't even say I'm a huge romance girly. Although recently, in my last few videos, that smut stuff is probably gonna change that for me. So this one starts off as one thing, like you're thinking, oh, like this is cute, like there's like a little bit of a relationship starting, and then our main character wakes up and everything has gone to shit. Like, people are missing on the ship, they can't find or reach anybody, they can't contact anybody, and oh yeah, there are giant brain creatures floating through the hallways trying to kill you. Like, did I forget to mention the giant brains? And I think this one is best to go into not really knowing too much about it other than the giant brains, because that's important and it's also on the cover. But this one kind of keeps your footing unsettled while reading, so you don't really know what's going on or what's happening. The main character has no idea what's going on. And it's sort of like revealed over time, but it's also kind of like pretty metaphorical. There's a lot of commentary and like stuff to be taken from this very short book about mental health and self-acceptance, and I think it's really interesting when bigger themes can be made apparent in works that are very gory or very gruesome or filled with giant wall touching, hall crawling brains. It's just cool and gross. Oh, one thing I will mention for this as well is there's like this side character, like robot guy. I loved him so much. It was so cute. He talks like an old-fashioned, like a movie person. Like he's like, okay buddy, it's showtime. Like it's so much fun and so cute, and having like that levity and that like bit of lightness with all the brains and the gruesome gross gory mess is very fun. If you haven't read anything else by Haley too, I would definitely recommend reading her other books, the ones that are out. If you like novella length works, she has quite a few to choose from, and they're all so different, but they're so much fun. I actually had my boyfriend read one of them too. I'm gonna get him to read this one next, so yeah, I recommend them a lot. And Haley's also just a fantastic person, so, and again, no bias, just like with anybody else I ever talk about on this channel, the way I view people and the way I view their books are different. So I wouldn't say I liked a person's book or writing if I didn't. I'm pretty honest. So Haley's a fantastic person, but Haley's also a fantastic writer. So definitely recommend this book and any of her other books. I'm doing so well with leading from one book to another because from that one, we're going to lead into Haley recommended this book to me, and it ended up being one of my favorite books of the year. And it is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. I loved this book. I know I've said it a couple times, but like sometimes I read a book and it feels like it's just meant for me, and I just love it so much. Like this one had like mama trauma, which I love in books. Like I myself have mama trauma, and so reading books where the characters have mama trauma, just it does it for me. Like every time, I just can't get enough of it. This one also has like an amazing cover, like beautiful, like so pink and then bloody house strip. I love it. It's so good. So this is about a girl, and she's going back home to take care of her mother, who is very, very sick. And this is the home where the girl grew up, and her father was a serial killer. And that is like something that's on the synopsis, the jacket of the book. Her dad was not like a good person, but he was a very good dad to her. So there is a little bit of like that, which I thought was really interesting because you don't normally see that depicted, where like the parent is so good to the child, but they're like hiding all this secret like bad stuff. That like sort of duality is really cool to explore. And also this book is very divisive because the ending is wild. The ending, you're not gonna expect the ending no matter what you think while you're reading this. I promise you. Like this takes a turn and it goes fucking wild. Like it gets bananas. I loved it. Like it was so fun for me. I thought it was perfect. A lot of people didn't, and that's okay. That's totally fair, to each their own. But for me, this is great. This is fantastic. The little twist like reveal at the end was so weird and so fun. And like all the little things that kind of like led up to it, like the little things that were mentioned and then explained by that reveal, I loved it. This is so good. I also read earlier in this year Upright Women Wanted by the same author, and I thought about including that one, but I didn't want to do two books by the same author, even though I did really love them both. I ended up doing Just Like Home just because I think I liked it. I would say I liked it a little bit more, like it really felt meant for me. But Upright Women Wanted, what am I doing with my hand? Why do I keep doing this? Who am I talking to? Like, it's so stupid. I don't know why I'm doing that. Upright Women Wanted was also excellent, like so good. It was very different though, so it's not horror. It's kind of like a Western about a bunch of queer women and a library that they run from like wagons. I don't know if I'm selling it properly. And it's been like a year since I read it, but I remember enjoying this so much. I loved it. So I wanted to mention it, even though technically now this list is going to be 11 books long instead of 10. Worth it. Okay, and then last but not least on the list, Walking Through Needles. This was brutal. Like, this is a crime thriller sort of book. I'm not sure which one it actually qualifies as. I would think it's very thriller-esque, but it has some elements of crime fiction as well. So take that as you will. And I will definitely warn that you should go into this one after checking out content warnings if you know that you're a person who needs content warnings in books, because this has some extremely brutal stuff in it that has stuck with me. Like there is a part in here, I'm not gonna explain it here, but if you've read it, then you know, there's a scene in a barn and some stuff that comes after that, and that when that was happening, I genuinely was just like, oh my god, like, oh, ooh. And my boyfriend was like, what's going on? And I told him what was happening, and he was just like, no, 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 no. And I was like, no, I know, no, 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 no. And like, for some reason, and when I say that it stuck with me, like, I don't know why, but like I'll randomly be reminded of it, and I'm like, yeah, do you remember that book I read with that one thing that happened in this barn? And my boyfriend is always like, why are you mentioning this again? Like, don't ever bring this up. I don't know why I bring it up, but I just randomly remember. So it's a fucked up thing too. Like, it is messed up. This book is messed up. But I will say there's a lot of stuff in this that's very important. Stuff about not being ashamed of who you are, of not being ashamed of the things that you're into, the things that you like, about exploring how trauma in your younger years can be very formative to you as an adult, and how that can be a very, very complicated thing in the sense of it impacting the stuff we like, the stuff we don't like. And it's a very complicated book, I honestly feel like, but it's very dark and very brutal. So I think some people might see the brutality and shy away from the overall messages of self-acceptance and the importance of healing. But I think if you're able to look past the very, very, very dark and brutal, difficult stuff that happens, this one's really good. I will also mention that I'm the kind of person who like watches Law and Order SVU as like a comfort show, and I know that's probably weird, but I've dealt with some shit in my life, so certain darker themes, while they are very hard to read or watch, sometimes they're not triggering so much as like comforting in a weird way, because you can see that other people have dealt with things, or you can see that other people have struggled with the same kinds of things that you've struggled after dealing with things, even if those things are not exactly the same. Yeah, so I think it's, you know, sometimes you have a thriller where you're just like cut and dry whodunit, like the husband and the wife, one of them murdered the other, and it was just like a basic domestic drama, you know, and those are fine, they're fluffy, they're regular, they're whatever. But then sometimes you have books like this, which are very, very dark, but also explore and say a lot of important things. And I think that's a good balance. Like, sometimes you want to read something fluffy, and sometimes you want to read something like Walking Through Needles, and just be prepared for sure. And I feel like I'm saying this for a lot of the people, but Heather's also a wonderful person, and she has another book coming out. It was recently like announced on like that publisher announcement sort of thing. I think she said that these are going to be like maybe like a series or something where the protagonist is into like darker things, and I'm probably explaining that poorly, but I would definitely recommend going to check her out and like follow her on Twitter, because she posts a lot of updates about the next thing that's coming out. I think it's called Hurt for Me, but I might be wrong about that. So, and I'm recording on my phone, so I can't look that up. But yeah, this one's so good. Definitely go into it with warnings, but yeah. Okay, so that is 10, well, those are 11 books that I read and really, really loved in 2022. Better late than never sharing this. Oop, my hair. Okay. Better late than never sharing this. I'm very glad to be sharing this, because this means I don't have to wait another whole year before I can look back on one of these videos. So next January, when I'm filming my best of 2023, I can already look back at my best of 2022, and it's like I've already been doing this for a year. Wow, how cool. If you loved any of these books, or if there were any books that you think I would like based on these ones that I love, I would like to hear them. But yeah, otherwise, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Oh, I forgot to say my name this time again, didn't I? I am gonna get the hang of this one day. I swear. I swear. My name's Cassie. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It has been a pleasure. I did this with my hands again. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and